We live in a world these days where things are so fast-paced, there's constant stimulation. Everyone is always on the go and days are just passing us by. But are material goods and money and a big house how we measure success? And does success equate to happiness? I've realized that the key to happiness is not what I originally thought it was. Sometimes slowing down and enjoying the simple pleasures in life and the quality time that we have with our loved ones is where we can find our purest joy. So this video is really just a reminder that there's always a tomorrow, but we need to embrace today and stop rushing through life like it's a race. The story of the tortoise and the hare is honestly the perfect analogy to describe this, because slow and steady is the best way to move through life. That way we can embrace and take in all the little things that make us happy. Here you see me on a typical Sunday morning routine. This is me trying to prepare a bunch of different things in the kitchen so that my family is well prepped for the week, or at least the next couple of days. So currently I'm making some gingerbread muffins, and I'll take you through the various things that I'm doing in the kitchen because the kitchen is one of my happy places. I will also link the videos for these recipes down below in the description, so if you want to take a look at them and, try these recipes out at home, you can do that. More importantly, as you follow me on this cozy Sunday morning, I want to share some thoughts and insights on what I believe I've discovered to be the true key to happiness. This is ultimately why I initially started this YouTube channel, to encourage other people to take life slow, to get back to our roots in the kitchen and with our family, and to enjoy the simple pleasures in life. So as I prep some hot chocolate for my kids, and my husband has them outside right now, he is getting wood for the fireplace, I'll just take you back a bit on when my whole perspective on how I wanted to live my life changed and why those changes took place. Like many people, I grew up in a typical family. With my parents in a suburban home. My parents both worked, and the expectation was that eventually I would graduate from college and I would go and enter the workforce just like, most women my age would. The idea of being a housewife or a stay-at-home mom was a complete daunting, thought to me. I never thought I could give up the working lifestyle. I believe that to have a nice house and, a comfortable life, you needed a dual salary, and that would require both the mother and father to work, because that was what I saw in my family and just those around me. An alternative way of living just seemed so foreign to me that I couldn't even fathom, taking that leap of faith and changing my lifestyle completely. I do think I was drawn to more of, I would say, a matriarchal role or matriarchal life, because I did enjoy working with kids, and I actually got my degree in education and was a teacher for several years before I, left that career behind. I also thought that in order for me to have sort of some empowerment and some control over my life, I needed to have my own financial security and I needed to have my own career, because that would give me my independence. Ultimately, I bought into this whole system where I thought to be a successful individual, I needed to be a working woman. But little did I know that was far from the truth. Although I enjoyed my job and I had a stable relationship with my now husband, it wasn't necessarily a fulfilling life. It was, constantly chasing that next um, achievement that I could have, or, purpose in life. And I never really felt true purpose, I don't think, until I had my first child. My eldest daughter is 5 now, so I can take you back about 5 years just to see where that change in perspective came from, and how kids can be such a defining, or, having your first child, becoming a parent can be such a defining time in someone's life that ultimately leads to so many changes. Becoming a stay-at-home mom no longer seemed boring to me. Here are the gingerbread muffins that I made and I served my kids their hot chocolate as they came in. It was cold outside, so they were really happy to have that. It gave them a nice snack with some pear on the side, and they're delicious. And they'll last maybe about a day or two, honestly, with three little ones eating these muffins. But I'm happy to provide a homemade snack for them. Back to when this whole lifestyle shift took place. Sometimes it takes a major life event to, sort of change your mind about things and to give you that push to go and pursue an alternative way of life, one that did not at all seem appealing before. Now, just before I became pregnant with my first daughter, I unfortunately lost my mom very suddenly. And this really shook me and made me realize that what I valued in life was not of high value anymore. And I realized the most valuable asset that exists is time. I'm not talking about trying to make lifestyle choices that will allow you to live a long life necessarily, which I mean, we can get into all those details a bit later in the video of, things that I've done that will lend themselves to that. But really, what I'm getting at is just the day to day time that we have and how we make use of it. I could no longer imagine myself going back to a 9 to 5 job and sending my kids to daycare and only enjoying that couple hours before and after work with them. I know I'm very lucky to have this privilege to be able to stay at home with my kids. This was something that my husband fully supported. I'm so grateful that he wants to provide for the family and he wants to be that sole provider. I know that is a big responsibility for him, and that's why I want to also provide for him and take care of the home and take care of the family. For me to be able to gain that time that I would have with my kids by becoming a stay at home mom, I would have to make many sacrifices as well. So we could not live in the same home that we were living in previously, in the city that we were living, because just the cost of living there was just way, way too high. And honestly, that was probably my best choice that I made, to move away from the city I grew up in, and it was a large city at that, and move somewhere else that I could raise my kids in a slower paced life. So, along with this change in perspective of what I wanted to do on a daily basis with my family and no longer returning to my career, came this new found appreciation for things that I could not previously do. So, by buying a property outside of a city in an agricultural area, I could now pursue things like gardening and cooking and homemaking and try to move towards this more old fashioned way of living. Here, what you see in the video is I'm making breakfast now for my family. I'm going to make them an omelet. On the stove behind me, I started to prep some fresh ricotta. I'll use that cheese in an omelet, and I also have some frozen peppers there that came from my garden in the summer. I vacuum sealed them and threw them in the freezer so that I could take them out on a future date like today. Gardening and cooking from scratch and bread making are now my hobbies of choice, and I really enjoy them. This doesn't mean that all my days are filled with, just fun activities. There are tons of chores that always need to get done, and I am not always the most excited to complete them all. There's just, those daily things that you need to do to upkeep the house and to maintain a good environment for your kids and your family. One of the most common questions I get asked is how I do it with my 4 little ones always running around, and how I'm, baking all these breads and trying these new recipes, cooking all these meals. And especially in summertime, I have a very large garden that I tend to. And honestly, the way I put it is I just thrive on the chaos. I embrace it and I do what I can with it. Because the reality is that everyone has their own hardships, has their own difficulties that we're always constantly trying to manage. And we just need to make the best of it instead of complaining about it or dreading it. Just try to embrace it, try to go with it, and try to do your best. This doesn't mean that I'm always super positive about everything. I mean, we all have our down days. That's just the reality of life, and the shift in seasons and changes that take place that affect us all. But we can't dwell on those hardships. We need to move past them and really try to make the best of every day. Some days, all my kids are just, not in the best mood, screaming, fighting with each other. I may go outside to the garden and I have several bug infestations that are eating my most cherished crops, or I may have made a mistake in a dinner that I made, which honestly really gets to me sometimes because I hate putting all this effort into a new meal and then it not turning out. But I really try to brush it off and just remember that it's such a minor inconvenience in the whole spectrum of life. I'm constantly busy and on the go with my family and, with my chores and my hobbies. And I think this is one really important thing to stay happy in life. I believe that being idle is sort of self-sabotage. It's giving you or not giving you a purpose. There's a lack of motivation there. And then you really start to dwell upon things and become unhappy with your current situation. Staying busy, but not too busy, not so busy that you're just overwhelmed and, can't bear it, but keeping active, keeping sort of a plan in mind and having some sort of goals are super important to stay happy in life. Everyone's goals can vary heavily. I, as a stay-at-home mom and as a wife, my goals sometimes can be so minor as completing, I don't know, the laundry for the day or completing some other meal I want to prep, um, or even just some activity that I want to set up for my kids. But then I also have longer term goals that are, I don't know, one thing, starting this YouTube channel and, sharing my views on things and my lifestyle. I often have goals for what I want to prep and grow in the summer. It's really important that I don't just become complacent in this lifestyle in my role as a mom, because that is what will sort of stagnate my progress and will probably lead me to have many unhappy thoughts, because I just don't feel a purpose. Everyone can be victim to that type of thought cycle, and it's normal. That's part of who we are as humans. Here in the video, I'm just draining the ricotta that I made. It is ready soon, and I'll use it in the omelet that I'm making. Making ricotta is honestly so easy. Everyone should give it a try, and it's so much better than the store-bought, and it's something you can whip up so quick, and it's just delicious, nice and creamy and smooth. One thing that really helped me to reevaluate my life and to find some sort of greater good was to look back at more traditional family structures and to try to implement some of those changes in my own family. I think that as society, we've moved away from our traditional roles. And I'm not saying that anyone needs to be bound to those traditional roles, but I think that being open to them will allow us to embrace some of the innate qualities that we have abandoned in more of the modern world here. Only once I started to look at my role a bit differently and see the value in me providing for my family did I feel like I had such an important role and so much value and so much purpose in life. Along with me rediscovering sort of this new way of life, which I mean really is the old way of life, right? I also had to find a new hobby. And like I said, that became cooking and gardening. They've really taken over a lot of my life and they give me a lot of goals and a lot of drive. So, one thing that I discovered though, and that I was absolutely amazed and shocked by, was how I feel like I've been fooled for a really, or I was fooled for a really long time into believing how difficult it was to make things from scratch. Once I made my first loaf of bread and it was delicious. It was maybe not the most beautiful, but it was pretty good. I mean, I was impressed with it. So was my family. Once I did that and I realized how simple the ingredients were, how simple the process was, and how easy it could be, I could not believe that I had been buying bread my whole life from the grocery store. This led me down a whole rabbit hole of looking at what other things I could make from scratch that would just be so much better nutritionally for myself, my husband, and my kids. I can tell you that prior to having kids, I probably never looked at the label on any food product in the grocery store. I know that they were not good for us. I knew based on, people saying it, hearing it in the media, wherever it was, it's sort of common knowledge that there's bad things in these packaged foods from the grocery store. But a lot of us just want to turn a blind eye to it and ignore it. Or honestly, probably the issue is that it may take a bit more effort to make foods from scratch. And so, as a convenience, we buy just those packaged foods from the grocery store or from wherever that will save us a bunch of time. What I see now, though, is that we're saving time in the present moment potentially. And I mean, I don't think that time is really well saved because we're risking time in the future. We're risking a long life. We're risking health complications. And that is time that we need. I want to be there to watch my kids grow up and to watch them have kids and watch my grandkids. I unfortunately don't have either of my parents here anymore, and they never really got to meet my kids. None of my kids will remember my father, and my mom was gone before I even had kids. So that's not something that I want my own children to experience. And I know my parents, of course, never wanted that for me as well, but I want to actively take measures to prevent that from happening. So instead of pushing things off and saying, "Oh, I'll make these changes when something bad happens," or I'll deal with it later, I want to tackle it now and to encourage other people to wake up a bit and sort of look a bit more into what it is we're consuming on a daily basis and to just make small shifts into rectifying potential past mistakes that were made, and eating healthier and better, more nutritional foods that nourish you and don't just fill you up. This does not mean that you just have to all of a sudden wipe out your whole pantry and your fridge and everything from potential processed foods that you have. It's a gradual shift that takes place, and it's a shift that I'm still working through. I still buy refined sugars. I still have certain things in my pantry that I know are not good for us, but we pick and choose our battles and what it is we can tackle one day at a time. And it's just the effort needs to be made to make those adjustments. It's also important to give yourself grace. You don't have to be perfect. I, by no means, am perfect. I make tons of mistakes, and I try to learn from them. And I really try not to dwell on them as well. I still have, I don't know, I don't buy organic everything. I sometimes buy meats on sale at the grocery store that I know are not grass fed or raised in the manner that I would like. I just do the best I can within the budget that I'm given because I do understand that we all need to work within our means. And I sometimes I'm a little selective on where I cut back, where I'll give myself grace and allow myself to buy those goods or foods that will be convenience foods versus where I'll try to make them from scratch. I know that a lot of times these foods that are organic or are like grass-fed beef, for example, are very expensive, that you're going to pay a lot more for them, and we don't all have that luxury. So I pick and choose. What can I make at home? What do I need to buy from the store? Where can I cut back? And where can I save money so that I can put it into some something else, something that is better quality. I guarantee, though, the number one way that I have saved a lot of money and the biggest lifestyle change that I've made is to make my own foods from scratch. This can include things such as cheeses, crackers, also bread, of course. I mean, any sort of bread product I really try to make from scratch. Pastas, sauces, not buying any of those packaged or pre-made sauces from the store and using your own produce to make those sauces. I've saved so much money that way, and it really feels good to be able to give back to my family and to help provide alongside my husband. What I'm doing now in the video is making some quick crackers for my son. Crackers are something I make probably weekly. He loves crackers, and he could probably eat all of these just today alone, but we'll try to spread it out a bit and feed him something else as well. I mean, my kids and their consumption of carbs, I can never keep up with it. This is just a basic cracker recipe. I don't put any fancy toppings, really. He just likes some nice sea salt on it. Sometimes I will put some peanut butter on the crackers while for him to eat, and other times he just grabs them plain. Sometimes I can't believe how much flour I go through in a week. I feel like I'm constantly refilling my flour jar, but I mean, that comes with making things from scratch. Those essential ingredients are, you go through them so quick but they're so much cheaper just to buy a giant bag of flour than to try to buy many boxes of crackers or loaves of bread or whatever it may be. So I want to return to that initial thought of how the most valuable asset I see is time, and that I was sort of tricked into believing true happiness was something other than what I deem it is today. I truly believed to be happy, I needed to be successful in my career. And I believe now that that was so far from the truth, and that I would just be constantly working and, striving for a success that I would never fully be able to achieve. I cannot believe that I was fooled sort of into believing that working for someone else and spending all my time in a career that, I mean, not that I didn't enjoy it, but that I didn't feel a purpose in, at the expense of time that I could spend with my family, was what would give me true happiness and purpose in life. Also, trying to accomplish and be a master at everything homemaking and gardening and this stay-at-home homesteading lifestyle is also an unrealistic expectation. Initially, when we bought our house and moved to a more rural area, I had all these aspirations, and I still do, but it's okay if I don't accomplish all of them as well. I thought that by now we would have had some livestock, or at least some chickens, and would have would be producing more in the garden, maybe have a greenhouse so that we could produce some fresh herbs or, cold hardy vegetables throughout winter. But those realities or those expectations really needed to be managed, because as I kept having kids, I realized I didn't want to put all my time and energy into building this homestead. I wanted to also be able to take in the slower times and to have those slower moments with my kids at home. I didn't want to be running around like a crazy person trying to accomplish all these tasks and just overwhelming myself with chores that come along with homesteading. So it's sort of this balance now that I'm sometimes struggling with as well, because I want to accomplish so much, but I also don't want to spend all my time pursuing those accomplishments and missing out on something else. So what I'm really getting at here is that we need to balance things out in life and put our time that we have today, tomorrow, and so on as the most important asset, and think about how you want to spend that time and what tasks you want to complete, and who you want to spend that time with. I just rolled out the dough for the crackers and I'm going to soon slice them or use a cookie cutter to break them into various pieces, and then I'll bake them. So this is just the whole, process of making crackers. It's so simple though. Don't overthink it. It's such a quick thing to make, and it's something that is um, loved by most of my kids, but my son especially. I'm such a creature of habit, though. I honestly grew up and had such a structured routine. I played a lot of sports when I was younger, and I needed to manage sort of my day, um, and the time I had on a daily basis because I always had practices to run to and, activities that I was doing, that I became so routine oriented just to get everything in a day done that I needed to accomplish. So even as an adult, I am such a routine oriented individual. I like to get a lot of my kitchen tasks done in the morning, make sure I know what's going on for dinner for the day, prepare any snacks that are necessary. And then in come lunchtime or just after lunchtime is when I sort of slow down and sit down with my kids, especially my older two girls because they don't nap anymore, and I try to do some activities or crafts with them while, the little hands of my younger ones don't get in their way quite as much. With wintertime, being cold out and everything, I really miss the days that I used to spend just in the garden in the morning, going and harvesting whatever fruits and vegetables we had ready, um, and to sort of think up meals that I would use those fresh harvests for. Instead, I find myself just in my kitchen, sort of longing for that sun and heat and next spring. I also feel like I'm constantly learning new things about raising young girls. My eldest is not very old yet, and every day, every week, every year, she completely surprises me with her abilities. And I want to make sure that I meet her needs and I meet the needs of all my kids. And I know it's going to be a learning process and a growing process raising kids, but I want to teach them hard work and to value good food, to value family, and to, put that mindset and pass it on to future generations of our family, because this family structure and the time that we have together is so important. I don't know if it was sort of the rustle and bustle of the city or just the family dynamic that I had growing up. I did have a loving family at all, but I just don't feel that I had the sense of community that I longed for. And even today, I find myself still searching sometimes for that community in my friends' groups and other, families with similar views as I have, that have young kids for my kids to interact with as well. I don't have a lot of my own family members around me, but I am very fortunate that my husband's family is very close, and I try to do all that I can to allow my kids to build a relationship with their grandparents and, with the extended family, because that's really what I longed for. I hope to one day be able to be that helping hand and guiding light for my kids as they get older and navigate through the world themselves. And I really want to plant those seeds and sow those seeds while they're still young, having them in the kitchen with me, having them alongside me on a daily basis allows me to have great influence over their views, their morals, things that they value, and who they become. Right now, I'm cooking an omelet. I'm trying to get breakfast ready, or lunch, I should say. We often have breakfast foods for lunch just because, they're nourishing, and it's one less thing I have to think about making, and one less meal I have to, you know, come up with ideas for. So I'm making an omelet for them, and I have the baby sleeping on me. This is sort of my usual routine for lunchtime, and I try to stick to it and have lunch around the same time every day, which is usually around noon. If I find myself falling behind, I will sort of put my other tasks aside and get the food ready because, as you know, with young kids, they go from being very happy to absolutely, upset and having a tantrum and a meltdown very quick because they're hungry. Oh, another thing that I did to try to, improve my lifestyle is I also cook with um, pots and pans and, utensils that are not carcinogens. Teflon is something that I've eliminated completely from my kitchen. I cook almost exclusively with cast iron, and I make sure to treat that cast iron well and to wash it thoroughly and take care of it because it's something I use daily. I'm far from perfect in the kitchen and I'm far from perfect in my life, but I like to see the beauty in the imperfect. So here are the crackers. They're ready. My kids are grabbing them right away. I put some out on the table just for them to snack on until breakfast is ready. So, as all my friends tend to ask me, is how I manage with 4 kids. And honestly, it gets easier the more kids you have. I had the greatest challenges going from 0 to 1 kid, and then 1 to 2 was quite a challenge as well. But after that, everything just seemed to flow and go together seamlessly. That's not to say that my kids always get along perfectly and that they're just little angels. I just think that they start to form this own like society themselves and they amuse each other and they're so used to having a little buddy that's there to play with that they become more independent and don't require necessarily my help for every little menial task. Um, and I love getting to know each one of their little personalities and how unique and different they all are. But then, the little things that they have in common too, because they are siblings. I can't wait to see what our newest member, the baby I have here, what she's going to be like in a year or so and how her personality is going to be similar or different from the other little ones. I don't know how many kids I want to have or I will have. I don't know what the future holds, but I'm so happy I made the choice to have these 4 kids and not just stop at 1 or 2 like most people that I know, because I think that there is so much joy in a larger family and I could not imagine my life any other way. My omelet is done here just in time. I have the kids sort of all around me starving. They're sitting at the dinner table waiting for food to be served. Thinking back to my own childhood, I remember these meals that I would have with my sister and my parents. They wouldn't happen quite as frequently as I would hope. I would often have a Sunday brunch with my family, and we would have dinners in the evening together as often as we could. But with my parents working and a busy lifestyle, it wasn't as common as I have now with my kids. And I'm so grateful that I'm able to do that and able to sit down and sort of hear their little stories that they have or the information that they want to share with me on a daily basis. So here's the downside to constantly having my kids at home and making every meal from scratch. The kitchen becomes a mess. I don't know how often I clean this kitchen. I probably run the dishwasher about 2 to 3 times a day, minimum. Maybe even 4 some days, depending on how how ambitious I am in the kitchen that day. But there are always so many dishes to be done. Now, my husband usually is very helpful when it comes to doing dishes, and he often will take care of the dishes after a nice meal that I made. But on this day, he had a lot of outdoor work to get done before a big snowstorm came in. So I said, go outside, do what you have to get done there, and I will take care of the dishes. I also knew that I used a lot of pots and pans and things that I sort of wanted to clean myself to make sure that they were cleaned to my satisfaction. I by no means am a neat freak or anything like that. I like a tidy house, but I'm not. I could probably make some improvements in my cleaning routines. Nevertheless, I care a lot about certain kitchen appliances or dishes or things that I use frequently. So I wanted to make sure that they were well cleaned myself. I actually think I'm a very efficient cleaner, though. I tend to get all this done pretty quick, and I usually can get it done before we even need to get my son down from a nap. Um, and I feel pretty accomplished once it's completed, looking at the nice kitchen. And finally, when you sort of wipe down the sink or wipe down the countertops and it looks, manageable, that's when I sort of get to take a breath and get myself maybe a cup of coffee and sit down and look at all that I did and reflect upon it and appreciate just this lifestyle that I have been given. So if you learned anything about my views or took anything away from this video, I really hope you just learn to embrace the now and value the time that we have together with friends, with family, and to enjoy the simple pleasures in life, not move too quickly through it. I hope I can inspire you to make some new recipes, try making some things from scratch. I hope you enjoyed this morning in my life and reflection video, and have a great day yourself.